parent will come and say to me is, I want my child to become an animator. And I'm like, why?
Where did you find your courage?
This is not courage, this is curiosity. India had one original reality TV format and we killed it. A piece of tech has to be exceptional to impress an 18-year-old. They really want to use the tech to achieve their own goal.
What creative careers actually look like?
So there's skill set and there's industry. Skill set is what you are good at, what you enjoy doing. Industry is what you love. Great philosopher Raju Hirani says in 3 Idiots, do what you love and you'll never have to worry about making money.
Thank you, Chaitanya, for this
thank you for having me.
And
thank you for having me. Look forward to chatting with you.
I first watched you speak at a school. I think it was Nahar International School, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
And I was just struck by who you were, the depth, the nimbleness, the outrageousness of everything that you represented. And I was able to see for myself the radical change maker. And from that point on, I realized that you're going to be a great source for school educators, for young people, for families, for parents, to actually build an alternative narrative to the narrative that has been built in schools about being in silos, about a particular career. So tell us a little bit about your journey, Chaitanya, and how from a chartered accountant to media and running this incredible institution.
Okay, so 2-3 things. One is radical change maker is a very big word, right? So I'm not so sure I qualify there, but I think, whatever I speak, whatever I talk to parents and students about, it is always something that comes very naturally to me. It is something that I have seen, I have observed. And over the last 20 years of dealing with, everybody from the age of 17 to 45. Our oldest student is 45 at Whistling Woods. You understand where their thinking comes from, where there is a structural positivity, where there is a structural issue. So a lot of it is just emerged from that. Now, the other thing that you mentioned is that, how has my career changed? And honestly, it's never been planned, and it's not always what parents and students want to hear. The belief that you can manicure and plan your career is, to put it mildly, delusional, right? What happens is, okay, wait, let me take half a step back. You can manicure and plan your career, but you may end up missing out on something spectacular which just goes past you because you're wearing blinkers, because very early on you decided this is what I want to do in life. And you're unwilling to look outside of it, right? So thankfully that wasn't something that ever was the case with me. I was a pretty good student in school, really good in science and maths. And ironically, when I finished my 10th standard, I chose BCom. And for no big, calculated decision, just because it was easier, right? Because as a 16-year-old, you don't always make mature choices. Eventually, it worked out fine, but the choice of college was entirely based on the vibe I got when I went and visited the 2 colleges that I had applied to, NM and Sydenham. So Sydenham had a better vibe, which basically is teenage speak for better looking girls. So I said, Acha, this is the college that I want to go to. And then 5 years, so 2 years of junior college and 3 years of BCom, did everything possible in extracurricular. So every Mood Indigo, every Bits Pilani, every Malhar, every Kaleidoscope, all those things. Contingent leader, represented the school for all these festivals. In my first year of graduate college, I started writing for Indian Express. Another senior of mine actually was working with Express then. He was part of the Express Newsline team. So he kind of brought me on board, and then I wrote a couple of pieces and they were accepted clearly. So I started writing for Express while doing all that. And then when I finished Sydenham, I was figuring out what I want to do in life. So was everybody else. Again, the decision that a 21-year-old makes, which is सबसे ज़्यादा पैसे कहाँ मिलेंगे, and that's when Arthur Andersen was recruiting. So I said, चलो, everybody's applying to be to Andersen, हम भी apply करते हैं. So I got in. I still don't know how. I went for my interview in jeans and a t-shirt. None of these things I would recommend, but I'm just telling you how things happen. And then 3 years of Andersen, finishing my articles. I really enjoyed working there. It's the hardest job I have ever done in life. See, your first job is very, very important, because your first job is actually not your first job. It is a continuation, it's a completion of your education. 3-year or 4-year undergrad that you do has to be bolstered by your first job, because that is really where you learn how to apply what you have studied, right? So I consider the first job as a continuation of your education. Actually, a student doesn't do a 3-year degree or a 4-year degree. They do a 6-year degree or a 7-year degree. And the first job, which should at least last 2 to 3 years, is that completion, right? So I was very, very lucky that Andersen happened to me. And so after Andersen, I did not take my CA final, because that was not something that I was keen on pursuing. I moved on to event management and kind of brand strategy consultancy, if you want to say, but primarily events. That went very well for about 4 years, and then Whistling Woods was coming up, and they were looking for somebody to launch the school, and so I was hired, and it's been 20 years now. So I started off on the marketing side of things to launch the school, and then within within 4 years, I had moved on to the BizDev role to grow the P&L, run the P&L of the school. And then a couple of years later, I took over as Chief Technology Officer, because we as a school decided that we would use tech as sharp end of the stick to grow. And since then, it's been these 3 roles, in addition to a lot of public policy work, a lot of work that I have done in talking to parents and students, and that essentially broadly is a summary of how we are here.
So, I want to go back a little bit. While it's a beautiful journey, but there was some level of fearlessness or courage. Today, there's a lot of conforming to this idea of what a manicured career is. It's actually, a lot of those decisions are happening out of fear. Where did you find your courage to not, be strong in science and still go pursue commerce, and then kind of choose your path?
So again, courage is a big word. Courage is what the people, the soldiers show on the border. This is not courage. This is curiosity. Every single thing I have done in life, every single new project, every single new job, every single new assignment, I have been underprepared for it. Every single one of them. Most people look at it as a worry. I look at it as that's the only way you approach something new. Because if you're already prepared for it, how is it new? How is it different? Where is the learning? Right? And this is again, I talk to parents and students and school counselors and principals, and everybody asks, how is Whistling Woods so good? What is different? And I keep telling them that in Whistling Woods, we teach students how to learn. First, we teach them how to learn, right? Then we teach them subject matter expertise. Then we teach them professionalism. If they don't know how to learn, how will they learn for the rest of their lives? The top 10 in-demand careers of 2025 did not exist in 2015. Right. It's not like they existed and they were not in the top 10. They just didn't exist. So, as an institute, we're preparing students. to use technologies that haven't been invented to solve problems that are not yet known.
Yeah.
How do we do that if we don't teach them how to learn?
Yeah.
Right? So, broadly, that's where it's come from, that you just want to learn all the time.
Yeah. You know, while courage is not a word you would use, I think my whole experience is there's a lot of courage needed to be even choosing a different subject, because society has a very magnetic impact. There's a lot of, mob energy, and to stand out of a mob really needs courage. A kid who's saying, I want to do something a little bit different, a family with 7 generations of doctors, and there's just incredible amount of pressure to kind of conform and to be on that path. And to break out of that is taking a fair bit out of the kids, and that stress that it's bringing. And I wanted to actually link that with something that I experienced. I graduated from a class of engineers, most of who, 90% of who went to the US. And I ended up staying back and teaching. In 5 years' time, I was starving, teaching at 30 rupees an hour. And many of them were working at Texas Instruments and Motorola and Microsoft and all of the big companies in the US. And it needed a fair bit of, I even considered, I did the GMAT in the middle, and I considered, hey, look, I need to go out and probably conform and follow this path. You run out of the energy sometime, but I was just loving teaching and counseling. So with young people, there's so much energy. They're always trying to fit in. They're trying to, so we have a legacy with how choices are made. And in a way, what I found most intriguing about your journey was that you actually integrated a lot of different things. There wasn't operating in silos. There wasn't this whole idea of humanities and sciences. And you actually brought all of these things together.
So honestly, I don't think that it has ever been in silos. It is I would say, an irresponsible search of simplicity that has forced us to look at things in silos, because हमको सब simple चाहिए.
Yeah.
Right? हमको complex नहीं चाहिए, because complexity scares people. So, which is why these silos were created, if at all. Right? Some of it is a colonial education legacy. Some of it is us not being willing to break out of it. And some of it is just random worrying about what random aunt or random uncle is going to say at the next family get together, right? And somehow the parents are have taken a hit in their parenting if their child is not a superstar by the age of 25, which is kind of ridiculous. So a lot of it is that, but a lot of it is also the fourth quadrant. People don't know that they don't know. Oftentimes what happens is you will end up discovering something that you really, really love only when you're exposed to it. About the financial gains and the financial success, yes, it's very, very important. But like the great philosopher Raju Hirani says in 3 Idiots, do what you love and you'll never have to worry about making money for the rest of your life, because eventually money will come. So the whole point is that until and unless you are willing to put your shoulder behind what is truly conviction inside, you'll never really know, right? And, see, parents are also not wrong. They're trying to build a safety net. They're trying to, their job is to worry about a time in the world when they are not around and their child has to survive. So I understand where they are coming from. But oftentimes, you just have to let it go. And yes, if it's there, if the child falters, right? The problem that happens when you build safety nets is I'm not so sure everybody's cut out for that kind of life. A lot of people use the safety net as almost as a where they don't have to give their 100% to something that is difficult because there is something easy that is waiting for them, which is the safety net, right? I'm not saying that it is recommended, but if you replaced airbags in every car with knives, there would be no accidents, right? So after they installed airbags in cars, the number of accidents that cars started to happen went up 10 times. Deaths went down by 10 times, but accidents went up by 10 times, right? Is because people knew there's a safety net. So, like, this is not something I recommend, but just a way to think about it, that you have to stop letting it know कि हाँ safety net है तो ठीक है 100% इधर नहीं देते हैं, right? So that becomes then an issue sometimes. So yeah, I mean, like I said, every parent is different.
So, what we were coming to is also intersection. The boundary between subjects, between areas of work, they're just being washed away. That we are talking about everything collapsing into everything. The most fascinating spots is not the highway, it is the intersection of all these different subjects. And in a way, your career and a lot of the work that you do here at WWI is about existing at the intersection of business, of craft, of technology, and all of that. So, as we were building, as IC3 was taking shape, we realized that there was this whole, conditioned idea about what counseling could do, about what guidance could do, about what careers were meant to be. And, this case study that you bring with WWI, your own journey, is actually emboldening people to say, okay, that you don't have to conform and that you could actually exist at the intersection of many different pieces. And that brings me to my next real topic for us, was this whole thing about staying relevant. I think in a way, when I look at what you've done here and all the initiatives, and I'm not going into all the details, but what you've done right here at WWI is you've just been constantly redesigning your curriculum. You're constantly staying relevant with the design, and so you're actually fixing the plane as you're flying it. You are actually doing a lot of things. And I think when a student is going through schooling, when an educator is watching a kid go through middle school and into high school, they often get stuck. They often get, they picked on something, and the adapting to my interests evolved, my subject interests evolved. So how do you actually keep building as you move along?
So a couple of things. One is, intersectionality is part of everybody's life, right? So there's no reason why it wouldn't be in education. So at Distinguished, there's a phrase that Subhashji uses a lot, which is kind of what we use at school, is every artist is a technician, every technician is an artist, and they both understand the business. That's how the industry grows. That's a good production house, so that's a good professional in the media and entertainment industry. Now coming to how do you translate this intersectionality or lack of conformity at the lower level, right? When you kind of look at it in education and in school education. So a lot of it comes from the fact that status quo is a comfortable place where nothing grows. So that is essentially the bedrock of why the Whistling Woods academics is so dynamic, right? And again, I'm just one part of a much larger machine that makes sure it happens. As Meghna president, a lot of the lack of status quo comes from her. Rahul, who's our director of academics, a lot of the pushing and challenging us academically comes from there. There's the vision of Subhashji, who wants to regularly make sure that we are relevant and updated. And that's not necessarily tech-wise, but also narrative storytelling-wise. There's our Dean, Ravi, who really wants to make sure that, we comply with both legal norms and ethical and moral norms of education. So it's a collective effort, and yes, everybody kind of pushes in one direction. Sometimes we also push back against each other because, more often it's like I will say, okay, I think we should add this to the curriculum. Rahul say, yeah, I'm not so sure it's ready, right, to be added. And I'm like, okay, let's see what we can do about it. And so it's always like that, right? Now, one of the reasons why we have to do that is because a student who joins Whistling Woods in, say, 2026, if they're doing a 3-year program and finish in 29, I want them to be ready for 2030. That means I have to be ready for 2030 in 2026. And preparation for 2026 starts in 2025. So in 25, I have to be ready for 2030. So that constant goal of thinking, looking 5 years out, that's where it comes from. And then it just becomes second nature, where we don't even realize that we are thinking 5 years out, right? And obviously, everything doesn't work out. There are a lot of things we introduce which just don't pan out because we don't know everything, right? And it's the willingness to take that risk, which is...
I noticed you partnered with Sony to give students access to F-35 digital cameras 18 months before its industry launch.
Almost 18, yeah.
And as I was reading more about, you're actually coming back from the future into the present.
Walking
absolutely. Into the future. So, and I want to correlate this, Chaitanya, to 5 years before the NEP talked about counseling. We began with the mission of counseling in every school. 10 years before CBSE sent out a circular making 2 counselors in a school mandatory, it's an affiliation bylaw edition. IC3 had begun. So, this whole thing about coming back. So, we're talking about now well-being. We think that if a student cannot sit peacefully in a classroom, no learning is possible, no engagement is possible. We think that well-being is going to be essential for anything in the future. So we've doubled down on well-being alongside counseling. But this need to come back from the future into the present. And how would you help educators? I am teaching the same physics for the last 20 years, the same math. I have the same equations running in my head. How do I, as an educator, go into the future, make this more relevant so that my student leaves with a skill, not with a subject?
So this is actually not a educator thing. This is an institutional thing, right? In Whistling Woods, so we have multiple departments: cinematography, direction, editing, producing, School of Media and Communication, animation, games, fashion, music, design, all that, right? The pressure on each of these departments to answer the question, what next, is relatively eased by an institutional structure that creates a parallel research and development arm, which is our Whistling Woods Emerging Media Lab. So it's the Emerging Media Lab's job to look at all the areas that Whistling Woods teaches in and start to build out the answer to the question, what next? So I relieve the department of that pressure because, in media and entertainment, it's a very, very human intensive thing. Every student is different. Every child is different. Every writer, every director, every editor is different, right? So it really needs a lot of mentorship, and it takes a lot out of the faculty. So I'd rather support them with this institutional creation, which on a regular 6-monthly basis or a 3-monthly basis, or even on a monthly basis, we'll go up to each HOD and say, you know what, ye naya hai. This is a new thing. This is a new workflow we can introduce. This is a new tech. This is somebody I can bring in to do this, who will teach both the faculty and the students. Here I can put you in touch with the Adobe. I can put you in touch with these guys. This is the new workflow that they've built. So what happens with that is they are almost relieved that somebody else is out there who is thinking about their subject and who's thinking about institutionally solving the problem of what next, right? So this is an institution's job to do it, to create that ecosystem that every department has somebody to reach out to and rely on, saying, "Acha yaar, naya kya ho raha hai? Please batao humko." Otherwise, what happens is the same head of department is teaching, is bothering about completing the curriculum, is bothering about student mentorship and individual mentorship, and half of their mind is like, "Acha yaar, I have to answer the question what next," which is unfair, kind of.
But
right?
if you could extrapolate this, Chaitanya, for a school environment, because we're talking to a school audience here, and we see that industry changes the fastest, then universities, and then schools. Schools change the slowest in that sense, because schools also have to comply with the boards that they represent, with the assessments. There is a lot of compliance that happens in school. In that structure, what are the best practices that they could
if you look at schools, the NEP has really taken all the straitjacket out, right? I remember 2015 is when the work on the NEP started, and I mean, I was one of the people who, must have been 1,000 people who contributed. There was one of the people who contributed, and the best thing about NEP is the fact that 30% of interdisciplinary education is allowed. And not just allowed, is recommended, almost mandated. So what that helps schools to do is to really structure their curriculum in such a way that they're getting out of this straitjacket. So the structure itself is allowing you flexibility. Right? Now it's up to the school to decide to do it. And I mean, I've dealt with a lot of schools, and honestly, there is a very, very critical individual in a school who, he or she, really can play that role well. Successful schools is oftentimes the vice principal, is not the principal. Because the principal has 89 things that they're doing, right? And they have to represent the school, and they have to be a brand, and they have to do this, and they have to speak, and they have to, answer to the trust, all those things, right? It's really that one level below. It could be the vice principal, it could be somebody else, right?
Dean of academy.
Whoever it is, right? In school. So in IB, it's a different structure, in ICSE, different structure. It's really that person who's also reading up, who's also researching, who's also pulling out articles, who's also talking to the respective teacher and say, "What do you think about this?" And then is putting some kind of a roadmap for school evolution of their curriculum, of their teaching methodology, of their content, obviously within the framework of the law. So it doesn't have to be the vice president, it has to be somebody. The institution as a school has to make someone responsible for answering the question, what next? Once that happens, then everything falls into place. And yes, if it means a little bit of budget is to be allocated, yes, a little bit of budget is to be allocated. The Whistling Woods Emerging Media Lab, which handles R&D, 1% of our top line goes into it, and there's almost no questions asked, right? Because the answer to the question, what next, can only be got when you walk those steps into the darkness, and sometimes you falter, sometimes you make it. So that's how it is.
Yeah, and I think what really struck me also when I was reading up a little bit was this experience you had of being invited to join the Academy of Motion Pictures, and you're the first Indian film educator in the Oscars Academy, is what I understood. And I just wanted you to kind of describe this experience some more for us, because what did you learn and what was your...
So what started to happen, slightly long answer, but what started to happen was when in 2010, Whistling Woods decided that, okay, we are going to make sure that we remain at least 6 months ahead of the curve. Our graduating students remain 6 months ahead of the curve. What started to happen is we started reaching out to tech partners all over the world who we already had some equation with and started to say, "Acha, okay, aap kya naya kar rahe ho? What new are you doing and how can we be a part of that?" And then slowly, that started snowballing. So we set up the Sony Media Tech Center in 2011. We've been working with them since 2008-7, but we actually set up the physical space in 2011. That kind of led naturally to the next kind of step, which is 2013-14 is when YouTube had really exploded. So we hosted the YouTube space and the YouTube Educator Lab. And then Google Education and Whistling Woods, we actually wrote the curriculum for content creation, audience development and monetization for YouTube. Created the concept of the YouTuber in India, right? With that, then what happened is that we kind of understood how to do this. So the next one was easier, where we set up a VR lab. And then it reached a stage where we actually got industry to fund academia, like it happens all over the world. So Jio came in and funded the VR lab for 2.5 years and became the Whistling Wood Jio VR lab. And then that kind of naturally morphed into our virtual production and emerging media lab, where we started to look at the immersive industry. While we were doing this, in many cases, we didn't even realize, but we had actually sped past a lot of so-called developed countries in some areas. 2014, 14-15 is when we started to kind of explore about traveling overseas to global media and entertainment tech conferences, first to attend. And then while attending, you end up meeting people, talking to them, telling them what you're doing. People who've just spoken and gotten off stage, you have a conversation with them. Can you come in for a master class, etc., etc., etc. So one thing leads to another, and then they realize that, you have something to contribute. So then you get invited to speak on panels. And then that starts to happen, and then you kind of get invited to associations, global associations, who are looking at India as a expanding market. So that's how I was invited to join the board of governors of SIMT, Society of Motion Pictures and Television Engineers. And I was not an engineer, I'm very far away from being an engineer, right? But that happened, right? And then I was part of the Virtual Production Rapid Industry Solutions Initiative. Through that, I also got invited to be a member of the HPA, the Hollywood Professionals Association, the IABM, which is now become IAMT, the International Association of Media Technologists. So once you kind of start to get into these associations and you start to make a decision, you take a decision-making role at the senior level in some of these, then you start to get noticed, you kind of start to get spoken of, they are like, acha, usko wo panel pe usko bulao. Now that starts to happen. And 2024, me and Whistling Woods got the SIMT Excellence in Education Medal. First time an Indian school has ever got it, right? Indian individual or a school has ever got it. After that, what happened was that I was nominated, because you have to be nominated for a membership in the academy, by a couple of people, the former president of SIMT and the former director of the HPA. So both of them, so Renard and Carrie, nominated me, and last year I was pleasantly surprised that I was invited in June last year, and it's been a ride over the last 9 months. It's not easy, it's a lot of work. I had to, I was part of the Oscars jury, so I had to watch about 120 films between August and December. I'm a member of the production and technology branch, so the people in the branch are exceptionally qualified. The two ladies who chair our branch. So, you have to realize that technology and production are not male dominated verticals as much as we think they are, right? So Annie Chang and Wendy Aylesworth both are fantastic creative technologists. So they're really, really exceptional. They have a bunch of Oscars between them, technical Oscars. And, the SciTech Council does a lot of great work. So, it's been surreal, honestly, rather than looking at it as some kind of an achievement, it's really about being underprepared for every role that I have, because I'm not as sound technically. So there's a lot of learning involved, a lot of the times the resources that Whistling Woods can garner, simply because we're in India and our fees are what we are, it's nowhere compared to what, say, a USC or a UCLA or AFI or a NYU Tisch has, who has, $80,000, $90,000 a year in fees. So, you just have all these things to consider while making sure that, you're still putting your best effort forward. So, I think it's been a fantastic learning experience for me. It will continue to be a learning experience for a few years until I'm, successfully and substantially able to contribute, but hopefully one day soon.
Yeah, and I think it's a great example for all educators to be nimble, to be ready to kind of unlearn, relearn all of the.
In my case, there is a bit of I am blessed because I have a very, very strong case of ADHD, right? So that enhances the curiosity element in me all the time. And yes, I have to sometimes force myself, कि boss, abhi for some time don't think of, first solve this thing that you have before you get on to what next. But yeah, I mean, that helps.
Yeah, you have that as a strength.
Yeah, it's a strength. Completely, it's a strength.
I also noticed that you built certain partnerships with industry, with Sony, Apple, Intel, for a film school. And there were a whole bunch of others. What was
Adobe, Sennheiser, HP, Qualisys, Unreal, Unity, and many more.
And that is naturally, altered the quality of the experience for students, for faculty, and this has all happened in the last 10, 15 years?
15, 20, about 17, 18 years.
So, a film school actually is not about, you've gone, it's much broader, because families, the careers around film and media, when every one of these companies is a company that maybe a lot of young people aspire to go to, but through a path which is completely different from a film school. And that's why I wanted to bring this up, because somewhere you have all of this collaboration happening. So using the right brain, being in a creative career, learning a craft, marrying it with technology, marrying it with business, this is in this framework in this country, in our culture, doctor, engineer, lawyer, this is a legitimate and a very, very reliable path, from what I would say, in that sense.
Correct. But honestly, every profession is a combination of these three things.
Yeah.
There is the craft or the art, there is technology, and there is business. Even a doctor, no matter what you are, you have to learn how to handle exceptionally complex instruments.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Even a simple endoscopy is an exceptionally complicated thing. So it's not like you don't associate yourself with tech.
Yeah.
Tech is a tool to tell a better story.
Yeah.
And the more you are able to wrap your head around the technology of the time, you can tell a better story. Once that becomes the seed, then technology just becomes a pathway. It doesn't become the goal. And thankfully, what has happened over the last 15 years, I would say, is that every next batch, right? So every as the students born after 2000, every successive year, they are less and less and less impressed with technology. Today, a piece of tech has to be exceptional to impress an 18-year-old. They are not overawed by tech. right? They are all digital natives. Some of them are so digitally native that they don't really care about the tech so much. They really want to use the tech to achieve their own goal, whether it's a better doctor, whether it's a better sports person, whether it's a better engineer, filmmaker, animator, game designer, visual designer, musician. So once that approach comes in and the school bolsters that approach, that technology is there, it's not a big deal. That fascination with tech goes up. Then it becomes a stepping stone. Then it becomes a tool, which is what the school's goal is, right? And honestly, it's also the goal of all these tech companies. Google is a media company. They think of themselves as an avenue to tell stories. And they appreciate people who treat them like that, right? So if you take one step in that direction, they will take two. Same thing with Sony, same thing with Intel, same thing with Adobe, with everybody. And it's just that we're there.
And I think this is something that I think we're trying to break out of. What creative careers, while every career is creative, whether you're a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer or whatever, there's creativity. But when I'm referring to creative careers, at least in the school parlays, it is film, media, a design, and some of these things. What you are really sharing here today is what creative careers actually look like structurally, economically, professionally, because that and possibly a lot of what was being done in the past with careers will be done by AI, by technology. And in fact, the need is only going to be greater for people to be creative and to be in creative careers.
So let's look at this thing also. There's skill set and there's industry. Skill set is what you are good at, what you enjoy doing. Industry is what you love. Right? And oftentimes, because I do a lot of work with students and parents, and the parent will come and say to me, I want my child to become an animator. And I'm like, why? And they are like, because he is very good at drawing. So why not an architect? Utna hi drawing lagta hai udhar. Why not a fashion designer? Why not a visual designer? Why not a graphic designer? Why not a production design? So there, you see that kind of blank, like puzzled expression on their face, because what happens is oftentimes, because of lack of knowledge, people conflate skill set with industry. This child draws well. Now, in that extended family, there is some uncle who draws well, who's part of the animation industry. So, in the parent's head, drawing well is equal to animation industry. There are so many people who want to say, oh, I want to be a screenwriter. Why? Oh, this person writes very well. So, if you write very well, what are you writing in the service of? Which is the industry that you love.
Yeah.
If you are writing in the service of an original idea meant to activate the imagination center of people's mind, now you are a novelist. If you are writing in service of a brand and you love brevity and to create brand value, now you are a copywriter. If you are writing in the service of a political ideology, you are a political speech writer. If you are writing in service of an audio-visual narrative storytelling, now you are a screenwriter. So, which industry you love, married with what your skill set is, that is really what defines what you will end up doing in life.
And this is the thing, most counselors, most educators, counselors, they haven't been trained to understand the creative economy at all, the different paths. Just something as simple as this. And so this kid, he's showing a spark in a certain area, but I'm going to try, I know the law, medicine, engineering, or whatever other framework, but they don't know what a creative technologist is or what this path is.
So in the media and entertainment industry, actually is not one industry, it's many industries.
Yeah.
There is television, there is digital, there is cinema, there is animation, there is video games, there is music, There is events, which is huge at this point of time, blowing up, concerts, all that. There is radio, there is out of home advertising that we see. Then there is the massive growing immersive experiences industry, museums and the immersive experiences, interactive immersive experiences, theme parks, all that, right? Now, each of these industries has the ability to become a whole career in itself. You can spend an entire lifetime just in animation, just in video games. So it's really about counselors educating themselves on what is the media and entertainment industry, what are the skill sets needed in the media and entertainment industry. And honestly, you don't need to look at the West. Just go back to 10,000 years ago and look at something called Lalit Kala. And if you read our scriptures, they talk about 64 Lalit Kala, 64 Lalit Kala. 64 Lalit Kalas are what comprise the media and entertainment industry. It is there in black and white, written 10,000 years ago. Now what you want to do is you want to figure out how to teach these Lalit Kalas and at what age you should be teaching them and what are the prerequisites for someone to be able to learn these skills. Or this Lalit Kala. Skills is a very poor English equivalent of Lalit Kala, right? Because it's much more than skills.
This is a training gap, not a values gap, not a, the kid
it's
is
an awareness
really wanting.
It's an awareness gap.
And awareness and, then going out and equipping ourselves as educators to say, we aren't even priming our, our kids have a spark in this area, but we are just not ready to help them navigate into that area. And I think that brings me to the last real, part of this.
Sorry, if I could just interrupt. See, you also have to understand why the media and entertainment industry is important. So, America's largest export is arms and defense equipment. What is America's second largest export? Media and entertainment content. Films, TV shows, formats. You look at reality TV in India, there isn't a single format which is an original Indian format. Dancing with the Stars, American Idol, Indian Idol, whatever, Naj Baliye, kids performing, Kaun Banega Karodpati, Big Boss. All of these are Western formats. And just because they created a successful game show format, they have been making money globally. India had one original reality TV format and we killed it. It was Antakshari. It doesn't exist anymore. When I was growing up, Anu Kapoor and Durga Jasraj, I think it was, used to do a kick-ass hosting and moderating of the Antakshari. It doesn't exist anymore. So, the media and entertainment industry is important in every country because that is how you sell your country to the world. Right? When a McDonald's opens up in Mumbai, a McDonald's at best is low quality, really poor quality junk food. Why is there a line outside it? Dunkin' Donuts opens up, there is a line when Dunkin' Donuts opens. Dunkin' Donuts is fried maida with sugar on top of it, with the worst preservatives that you can think of. Right? Why? Because for decades through content, this has been sold as cool. This has been attached with Americanism and the American success story. When, whatever, Steve Smith kills the alien and lands back on Earth and shows up and has a McDonald's burger, that's the power of that narrative. So, why can't we do that? And the way to do that is to actually have your content penetrate the world and to have your content consume the world over. That will happen when you have high quality content creators who are graduating from your higher education, which will happen when you have really, really good quality students who are finishing high school, being aware that these are skill sets and this is the industry that I can pursue higher and technical education. Right? So, that is where the cascade comes from. And that's why it's important. Right? Sorry, your question.
No, and I think that kind of you kind of summarized a lot of what we've been trying to do, in a sense, that we have schools built for creativity around the industrial revolutions, trying to get young people to memorize, to repeat, to follow instructions. And that rigidity, that inertia has become the collective consciousness of schooling in a way. And what we've been able to do to a great extent.
I think it's changing though.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And I think when we talk about at IC3, when we talk about counseling, it is about context. It is about, redefining what purpose is. And everyday school life, I find meaning and purpose in the school assembly, in the lunch break, in the geography class, in the sports day. So what you said was very, very interesting right at the beginning, that you went to every festival, you went into BCom, you did every extracurricular activity, but counseling and the counseling laboratory pedagogy with IC3 is essentially saying there is no such thing as extracurricular.
Correct.
Everything is deeply immersive curricular activity. That the football field is the best place to learn mathematics. You kick that ball, that's your parabola. And all geometry and all algebra on the football field. And that's really what counseling is.
One of the most complex and complicated advanced books of mathematics is a poem. It's called Lilavati, written by Bhaskaracharya. Lilavati was his daughter's name, and he wanted to teach her complex mathematic theorems. So he wrote it in poetry. It's genuinely brilliant. Right? There is English translations exist in online. You should people should look at it and read it, and you realize that how the confluence between creative poetry and mathematics, which is the only thing that we know, everything else we believe, right?
So, it's interesting. I love math. Math was my only subject. I was a hopeless boy in school in that sense, that I did poorly in everything else, but I loved math by the end of school. And I always enjoyed doing math with music. When I grew up, I figured, why do I like to play music in the background while doing some pretty challenging math stuff? And I figured that math has the same rhythm as music.
Rhythm and music has both.
And that actually music and all of the integration of all these notes is deriving a piece. And so there is so much math in everything, but we've kind of, we really need to let young people start to see that their subjects are everywhere. Their schooling is not just happening in that classroom.
Correct.
It's happening on their vacation, in their sport, in the computer game. And I think what you bring, and hopefully we can work on taking some of these ideas that you have here at Whistling Woods and your pedagogies, and making a full-fledged curriculum, 10-hour, 12-hour, 8-hour curriculum for every school educator to go through.
Sure.
In the context of counseling and well-being.
So, it's perfect. And, it's really up to the school to tell the child, and for the child to understand, and for the teacher to explain to both the student and the parent. That when you have forgotten what you studied for your exams, what remains is education.
Yeah. Wow.
Right? So, what does the school do? Number one, it teaches you how to learn. Right? How do you know that you're educated? You take the sum total of what you remember, what you have learned, after you have forgotten what you studied to get marks.
Yeah.
That is education.
Beautiful. And so thank you, Chaitanya, for your time. And,
No, thank you so much for having me.
I grew up in a world myself where, music, sport, playing, but more music, art, dance, anything that was creative was perceived to be, wasting your time, focus on studying. you know, and I just wanted for all our school educator colleagues, for all our teachers, that playing, music, art, theater, media, all creative careers or creative activities are the best ways to learn the hard sciences, to learn about life, to learn about everything that we need to learn to equip ourselves to move on and to find peace and purpose in our own everyday lives. So thank you for enlightening us and for all that you do. And
no, most welcome.
thank you for supporting the IC3 effort of bringing counseling and well-being to every school. And we
happy to help.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.